Celebrating a life. Dickens's characters speak out. Charles Dickens died in 1870 at the much too early age of 58. He leaves behind a legacy of books and stories that live on and will continue to do so for generations to come. Over 2,000 characters make up the world of Dickens, and this year, the 150th since his death, it is fitting that some of them, passing by, leave their own tribute with the words that he gave them, which single them out in our hearts and memories. For instance, first Mr. Micawber from David Copperfield.
My other piece of advice, Copperfield, you know. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £19.19 and 6. Result, happiness. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £20 and 6 pence. Result, misery. The bloom is blighted, the leaf is withered, the god of day goes down upon the dreary scene, and in short, you are forever flawed.
From Oliver Twist, Nancy.
For the reason that bad life as Fagin has led, I have led a bad life too. For the reason that there are many of us who've kept the same courses together, and I'll not turn upon them, who might any of them have turned upon me but didn't, bad as they are. Among them, that there is one, this Bill, this Sykes, the most desperate of all. I can't leave. Whether it is God's wrath for the wrong I've done, I don't know, but I am drawn back to him through everything, and I should be, I believe, if I knew that I was to die by his hand.
From A Christmas Carol, Scrooge.
The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigour then. I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. And if they would rather die than go there, then they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Also from A Christmas Carol, The Spirit of Christmas Present.
From the foldings of its robe, it brought forth 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet. They were a boy and a girl, ragged, scowling, but prostrate in their humility. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacing. They are man's, and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it, slander those who tell it ye, admit it for your factious purposes, and make it worse, and bide the end.
From David Copperfield, Aunt Betsy to Mr. and Miss Murdstone.
You can go when you like. I'll take my chance with the boy. If he's all you say he is, at least I can do as much for him as you have done. But I don't believe a word of it. Good day, sir, and good-bye. Good day to you too, ma'am. Let me see you ride a donkey over my green again. And as sure as you have a head on your shoulders, I'll knock your bonnet off and tread upon it.
Again from David Copperfield, Mr. Dick.
Do you recall the date when King Charles I had his head cut off? David replied that he believed it happened in the year 1649. Well, so the books say, but I don't see how that can be, because if it was so long ago, how could the people about him have made the mistake of putting some of the trouble of his head, after it had been taken off, into mine? Oh, it's very strange that I can never get that quite right.
From Martin Chuzzlewit, Mrs. Gamp.
Well, I'm sure says you're a wearing old soul. That's the blessed truth. You ought to know you was born in a vale, and that you lives in a vale, and that you must take the consequences of such a situation. As a good friend of mine has frequently made remark to me, which her name, sir, I will not deceive you, is Harris. Oh, Sary, Sary, little do we know what lays before us. My own family, I says, has fallen out of 3 pair back, and has had damp doorsteps settled on their lungs, and one was turned up smiling in a bedstead unbeknown. Well, and as to husbands, oh, there's a wooden leg gone likewise home to its account, which, in its constancy of walking into public houses and never coming out again till fetched by force, was quite as weak as flesh, if not weaker.
From Oliver Twist, Mr. Bumble to Mrs. Corney.
Anti-parochial weather? Anti-parochial weather, this, ma'am? Why, we've given away, Mrs. Corney. We've given away a matter of 20 quartern loaves and a cheese and a half this very blessed afternoon. And yet them paupers are not contented. Why, here's one man that, in consideration of his wife and large family, has a quartern loaf and a good pound of cheese, full weight. Is he grateful, ma'am? Is he grateful? Not a copper farthing's worth of it. What does he do, ma'am? He asks for a few coals. If it's only a pocket handkerchief full, he says. Coals? What would he do with coals?
Here's Nicodemus Dumps, the most miserable man in the world, in the Bloomsbury christening.
Ladies and gentlemen, in accordance with what is, I believe, the established usage on these occasions, I, as one of the godfathers of Master Frederick Charles William Kitterbell, venture to rise to propose a toast. I need hardly say that it's the health and prosperity of that young gentleman, the particular event of whose early life we are here met to celebrate. Ladies and gentlemen, it is impossible to suppose that our friends here, whose sincere well-wishers we all are, can pass through life without some trials, considerable suffering, severe affliction, and heavy losses. That these trials may be long spared them is my most earnest prayer, my most fervent wish. I hope and trust, ladies and gentlemen, that the infant whose christening we have this evening met to celebrate may not be removed from the arms of its parents by premature decay, that is young and now apparently healthy, may not be wasted by lingering disease.
From our mutual friend, Mrs. Boffin.
Now, I'll tell you what I want, Noddy. I want society. It's no good my being kept here like a waxwork, is it now? We have come into a great fortune, and we must do what's right by our fortune. We must act up to it. I say, a good house in a good neighbourhood, good things about us, good living and good society. I say, live like our means, without extravagance and be happy. Laura Mussy, when I think of me in a light yellow chariot and pair with silver boxes to the wheels, and a footman up behind, and a coachman up in front, with 2 bay horses tossing their heads and stepping higher than they trot long ways, and with you and me leaning back inside as grand as 9pence. Oh my! Oh!
From the Pickwick Papers, Sam Weller.
It was one of the largest patterns as ever turned out. Regular fat man as hadn't caught a glimpse of his own shoes for 45 years. Well, he always walks to his office with a very handsome gold watch chain. You'd better not carry that here watch, says the old gentleman's friends. You'll be robbed of it, says they. Shall I? Says he. Yes, you will, says they. Well, says he, I should like to see the thief that could get this here watch out, for I'm blessed if I can. It's such a tight fit. At last, one day, the old gentleman was a-rolling along, and he sees a pickpocket as he'd known by sight, a-coming up, arm in arm, with a little boy, with a well large head. Here's the game, says the old gentleman to himself. They're going to have another try, but they won't do it. And he begins to chuckle. Very hearty indeed, when, all of a sudden, the little boy leaves hold of the pickpocket's arm and rushes, head foremost, straight into the old gentleman's stomach, and, for a moment, doubles him right up with pain. Murder, says the old gentleman. All right, sir, says the pickpocketer, whispering in his ear, and when he comes up straight again, the watch and chain was gone. And what's worse than that, the old gentleman's digestion was all wrong ever afterwards to the very last day of his life. So, just you look about you, young fella, and take care you don't get too fat.
From Nicholas Nickleby, his mother, Mrs. Nickleby.
Kate, my dear, I don't know how it is, but a fine, warm summer day like this with the birds singing in every direction always puts me in mind of roast pig with sage and onion sauce and made gravy. Well, upon my word, my dear, I don't know. Roast pig. Let me see. Ah, on the day 5 weeks after you were christened, we had a roast. No, that couldn't have been a pig either, because I recollect there were a pair of them to carve, and your poor papa and I could never have thought of sitting down to 2 pigs. No, they must have been partridges. Roast pig. Well, I hardly think we could ever have had one now, I come to remember it, for your papa could never bear the sight of them in the shops. Used to say they always put him in mind of very little babies, only the pigs had much fairer complexions. And he had a horror of little babies too, because he couldn't very well afford any increase to his family and had a natural dislike to the subject. It's very odd now. What kind of put that into my head?
Also from Nicholas Nickleby, Wackford Squeers to Nicholas.
This is the first class in English spelling and philosophy, Nickleby. We go upon practical mode of teaching in the regular education system. First boy is cleaning back parlour window. C-L-E-A-N, clean, verb active, to make bright, to scour. W-I-N, win, D-E-R, window, a casement. Now, when boy knows this out of book, he goes and does it. Second boy is weeding garden, to be sure. A B-O-T, bot, T-I-N, tin, botin, N-E-Y, botany. Noun, substantive, a knowledge of plants. Now, when he's learnt that botany means a knowledge of plants, he goes and knows them. That's our system, Nickleby.
Lastly, from the old curiosity shop, Mrs. Jarley describing her waxworks show.
That is an unfortunate maid of honour in the time of Queen Elizabeth, who died from pricking her finger in consequence of working on a Sunday. Observe the blood which is trickling from her finger. Also, the gold-eyed needle of the period with which she is at work. That one, gentlemen, ladies, is Jasper Packle Merton, of atrocious memory, who courted and married 14 wives, and destroyed them all by tickling the soles of their feet when they were sleeping in the consciousness of innocence and virtue. On being brought to the scaffold and asked if he was sorry for what he had done, he replied, yes, he was sorry for having let them off so easy, and hoped all Christian husbands would pardon him the offence. Oh, let that be a warning to all young ladies to be particular in the character of the gentleman of their choice. Observe that his fingers are curled, as if in the act of tickling, and that his face is represented with a wink, as he appeared when committing his barbarous murders.
These have been just some of the characters that we in the Dickens Declaimers of Broadstairs have brought to life with our performances. But there are so many, many more. Dickens's characters live. They are unforgettable. Their pathos, their comedy is timeless. And the popularity of his novels never decreases. We say thank you to him for his books, his social awareness, his ceaseless concern for the poor, the oppressed, and the very young. His social campaigning was legendary, and he succeeded in altering bad practice found in many walks of life, with the only weapon at his disposal, his pen. We leave the last word to Professor Michael Slater, a Vice President of the Dickens Fellowship here in Broadstairs. In his book, Charles Dickens, he mentions Dickens's last book, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Professor Slater explains, the chapter ends with the words, and then falls to with an appetite. These were thus the last words of fiction that he ever wrote. And it would be hard indeed to imagine ones more appropriate for a writer whose multitudinous readers have been falling to with an appetite ever since. Thank you.